Because I think again, as an outsider, I think one big advantage that, like, I think each side has its advantages, right? And I think that one big advantage that the right or Republicans have, in my eyes, is they seem to like America a lot more, right? They seem way more patriotic. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case across the board. Like I know on a literal level, I know most majority of Democratic voters will also love America and be patriotic. But in terms of the way it appears, the branding, shall we say, it looks like I think one of the most powerful things that really appeals to Trump, whether or not people like him or dislike him, is it's clear to me that he loves America. Like he's patriotic. He loves the USA. And when you're looking at the modern left or some aspects of it, there's a lot of anti-American, anti-patriotic stuff going on, which I think I think there's a lot that turns people off, but I think that turns people off because most people are like, okay, America, the USA has its flaws, but I believe that most Americans are still very proud to be from the USA. But it seems like it's become quite trendy in certain circles to be anti-American. And I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Yes, I see some of that, but I would push back a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
What shows up on the right, to me, looks like nationalism and not patriotism.
Okay.
And I do see a lot of unpatriotic stuff on the left. It's typically the far left that behaves this way.
Sure.
All of it is, I think, quite deaf to the central characteristic of patriotism,
Okay.
which seems to me a willingness to sacrifice for one's country. So nationalism does not have this character. Nationalism may be very proud of one's country, but it utilizes its country to get ahead. And I think that this distinction is captured very well in the famous quote from John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. He's talking about the difference between nationalism and patriotism. And I think patriotism is surprisingly rare.
Okay.
Now, I don't think it has to be. I think Americans in general have that instinct, but so much of what we now hear is either sanitized so that it is as if America is without fault, and frankly, you will hear this in the president's rhetoric all the time. If we're doing it, then we're doing it better than anyone else, right? We're like incapable of failure or something. And on the left, there is this focus on historical wrongs, which are, of course, very real. But I would advocate that people take a view of their country, that Americans look at the United States and see it as one sees a family member struggling to be good, right? If this is your child, you can simultaneously love your child, you can sacrifice for your child, and you can recognize that your child has screwed up. You may be angry at your child at the same moment, but for anyone who has children, you know that it is not that when you are angry at your child, you don't love them. It's just simply not that way, right? In fact, your anger at them may be invigorated by the fact that you do love them, and you're angry at them for going down some road that is going to harm them long term, and really it is their future well-being that is causing you to scold them in the present. And so anyway, I'm frustrated that so many on the left seem to see the failures of the U.S. as evidence of our badness, because that's not in any way correct. This was a spectacular prototype of the correct system. And there is a reason that the American experiment has caught on and effectively created the modern West. And that is because we are aspiring to the right things. And it is time that we stopped being ashamed of those things. And we got back to the job of finishing the project rather than focusing on what it did historically that was against our values, right? The point is, okay, that was against our values from the very inception of the country, but it's fixable, and we are far more likely to fix this beautiful prototype than we are to invent something better by destroying it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the key word for me, if I could define 2020 and maybe even the last few years in a single word, to me, it's overcorrection. I just feel like we're going through a huge overcorrection on a lot of different levels. I just think overreaction and overcorrection. And I agree that look, with every single country, if you want to find flaws in an individual or in a nation or in the world, we can do that forever, right? There is no country where if you go back in the history, you can't find a lot of some truly awful stuff, right? Or even an individual. If we were all to judge each other based on the worst things that we've ever done or we've ever said, I don't think we'd really get on with each other. But yeah, it just seems like there's this overcorrection, as you said, and it can happen in both directions, right? An idea to want to denial any historical evil or any current problems which may still exist or be pervasive. But then there's also this narrative of, you know what, the entire thing, top to bottom, every structure, every system, every institution needs to be torn down, ripped, pulled up from the roots, and entirely replaced with something else. And it seems like that way of thinking, at least it seems to be gaining steam. I don't think it's really that popular, but it seems to be gaining steam. And a lot of people don't really seem to want to stand up and go, okay, wait, hold up, hold up. That's not, neither of these narratives is correct. We can acknowledge historical sins without blowing up the whole system and throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as they say, getting rid of everything that has been accomplished and been done and achieved over the past decades and centuries. Conserving. This is to me, this is the whole point of conservatives and liberals, or like those lines of thinking. It's preserve the stuff that is good, and slowly tweak and change the stuff that is not so good, rather than just demolish the whole thing and try to start again. So how can those sensible, reasonable voices in the middle be brought together and be made louder? Because I think that's the majority of voices, but it just seems like they're getting drowned out.